He's the blender that makes everything mix up and come out with a lot of wins. To Dane Bradshaw. Not bad for a one-arm bandit.
Still works and throws the pass. Almost intercepted. It is intercepted. Bradshaw lays it up and in. Bradshaw steals the ball on the inbounds at the top of the key. Spends it in Tennessee. Leads it 74-72.
Welcome to the Boom Boom Room, Dane. Just be quiet for a second. Just be quiet for 1 second.
You got it.
Hey, welcome to the Boom Boom Room, people. I reached in my bag and was able to pull out a Tennessee treasure, all the way from West Tennessee. Some people would say an undersized guy with a huge heart. I say, man, a dog that you put him in any fight, he's going to come out with a couple marks, but he's going to come out on top of it. You know what I mean? This is my guy. I want to say I had a lot to do with him coming to Tennessee, you know, but we'll get to that later, man. It's the one and only Dane Bradshaw. Dane, how you doing, man?
I'm great, man. I'm excited to be here. I feel honored. You know, it's one thing to get a text from you. It's another when the actual invite shows up in your email inbox saying you are invited to the Ron Slay's Boom Boom Room, man. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So I'm honored.
It's official. I appreciate it, man. We're gonna get you the shirt soon and everything. So don't you worry.
Right.
We're gonna make it official. Hey, so Dane, we're gonna jump straight into it, man. Give me a couple of people that maybe influenced you early on, and you know, let me know when was the time that you fell in love with the game of basketball?
Oh man, to keep it at just a couple would be tough, but I can tell you early on. So I'm the youngest of four, and we're 9 years apart from the oldest to me. So older brother Ryan, another brother Cody, my sister Bridget, and all of them played basketball at the college level from D3 to Ivy League to D2. And so that's all I knew growing up. And my dad loved basketball. He didn't play it as much growing up, but he just took to the game. And my mom was a great athlete. You know, back in her day in high school, there was, you know, they split offense, defense. I mean, this was before Title IX and all that, but they loved the game. And so, like, when you go back down memory lane for me, all I can think about is the driveway and playing 2-on-2. And you talk about trying to get some of that toughness, man. I mean, it was the siblings that were beating up on me. And if the ball would roll down the hill, it was like, little brother, you go get it or we're not playing anymore. Yeah. And so I got to go get the ball. And, like, the first thing I had to do was just be able to beat my older sister. And that took a long time in itself. And so there was plenty of times where, you know, there were fights and people going to the house, slamming doors, crying, all that stuff. And so, you know, they punked me, they roughed me up. And but it was, man, I'm so lucky to have had that in my life, man, because as you mentioned, I grew up in West Tennessee. And so, you know, Memphis is known for being a very prideful basketball town, and it's not for the weak at all. And so we'll get to that part as well. But like there's no question, my family is what made me tough enough to go into those areas in Memphis and in the inner city leagues to where there was a little bit of intimidation, but I didn't feel like I wasn't tough enough to hang in there. So that's where it all started for me. And I just grew up loving it, trying to be like your older brother, your older sister, and doing everything you could, watching their games, sitting in the bleachers. You know how it is when you're out there, you're watching, let's say you're 7 years old and you're watching the junior high game, and you're just admiring them. And then, like, you can't wait for halftime. You brought your basketball with you, and at halftime you're going out there trying to get shots up before the teams run back out, you know. So that's all I knew. And actually my mom went to LSU when Pistol Pete was playing there.
Ooh.
And so I grew up watching the VHS Pistol Pete homework basketball drills in my driveway. I'd plug in the TV when my older siblings weren't there. I'd just plug that thing in the driveway and and be doing 2-ball drills and all that stuff, watching some of him.
So early on, man, it seemed like your competitive edge was put into you early on by your family. You know, I know your father and your mother, but and they're something else. So I know where the competitive edge comes from. You know what I mean?
Hey, we work hard and we play hard, man. We work hard, play hard.
You better know it. You better, and I love every minute of it.
Yeah.
I love it. So you get ready to go into middle school. Were you playing? Tell me about that experience. Middle school basketball in West Tennessee, in Memphis. Tell me a little bit about that.
You know, I had a great AAU experience. I know AAU can get a bad rap sometimes, and just like any business or any organization or industry out there, you're going to have some good and bad. But, man, I had a great experience. I played for the 2nd Presbyterian Blackhawks, which was really a game changer for me. When I was like 8 or 9 years old, I had a coach that recommended me on kind of a church league team, said, hey, you might want to try out for this competitive league. And, we didn't know anything about it, but that's where you really got to play up against some of the best, and you got to go to, the sub-state, state, national tournaments before they got too many tournaments, in my opinion, right now. But nevertheless, that's kind of where I really gained my confidence, knowing like, okay, maybe I can hang with some of the best guys in the state and across the country. And then you go to middle school. I was at a private middle school called Woodland Presbyterian, and it was great. But that also, probably the best competition was had during the AAU years. And, if it was just about that league, I probably wouldn't have maybe as developed as much. But I had great teammates. We won a couple championships. And really what happened from there was, and my parents, it was different back then because AAU was just starting to take off in terms of that's where all the coaches go to all the events. But my parents had seen with my older siblings that, it really mattered what kind of league you were in going into high school, what coaches were going to go to what games. Now, nowadays college coaches will come show their face at the high school game, but it doesn't matter as much where you go. They've already done all their homework in the summer and all that. So, but back then it was like, Woodland, where I went to school, pretty much all my friends and a lot of my friends that had graduated the year before all went to Christian Brothers High School and a lot of the private high schools in Memphis. And that was, I had my AAU friends, but my comfort zone was really going to be following them. And, sometimes mama knows best and dad knows best. And they were the ones that really made me branch out and say, look, if you're serious about basketball, you need to be playing against the best, get the most exposure you can. And ultimately we, at the time, you would remember Robert O'Kelly. He was a star at White Station High School, followed by Ernest Shelton. Yep. So we didn't really have any other connections other than just following their success. And I got to go in there and meet Coach Tippett. And I can remember the first time we met Coach Tippett, and his office phone rang, and it was Robert O'Kelly at Wake Forest calling just to check in with his coach. And maybe he arranged that, maybe he didn't, I don't know. But if he did, he's a smart man. But if he didn't, he's still a good man. So, but I remember sitting there, and that meant a lot to my parents and myself to realize, somebody like yourself calling your Oak Hill coach after you left, just saying, "What's up, coach?" And so you saw that bond and the success. And I had a couple of guys I knew from AAU that once they saw me come to a game at White Station, kind of looking at it, I remember my great friend Ray and Lil Melvin, man, but Fred Harris. Yeah. And Ray came up to me. He was a freshman at the time, and he was like, DB, you thinking about coming here, man? Oh, we're going to run this city. You got to come. I mean, it was like a Ron Slay effect. It really, like, just a big old personality. Right. He had his own version of the Boom Boom Room down there with a big smile on his face. Right. And, how could you say no to that? And then from there, man, I just learned so much going into the White Station program. And there's nothing I'm more proud of. It had nothing to do with the individual results, but the team. We were over a 4-year period at White Station. We were 137-10 with 3 state titles and 3 national rankings. And we had sometimes we went 14 deep. Guys weren't even playing half the game, but I never even averaged double figures. And I tell kids all the time, like, I was getting recruited by Power 5 schools, going to Nike All-American camps, and I was the leading scorer on my team. And I'll say, how many points do you think I was averaging? And everybody thinks, 20, 25. I said, no, I was averaging 9.4 points per game.
Right.
But the difference was my team was winning, man. So coaches look at winners and they look at winning systems. Mm-hmm. And so we had a bunch of guys get D1 scholarships based off the team success. And it's probably the greatest team experience I've ever been on, and something that, as a young man, that sticks with you for the rest of your life.
Without a doubt, man. That's especially in high school, man. That's some of the best time of your life moving into college. That becomes a whole different segment. But with you at White Station, what was the recruiting process like? Who were you picking from? Because I remember when you came to Tennessee on the visit, I was like, man, who is Dane Bradshaw? Like, you know what I mean? And then when I met you, it was automatic, like, oh man, dude, cool as hell. Hold up, man, I'm messing with him. You know what I mean? So tell me, before we get into that though, tell me what some of your picks were. Were you always focused in on Tennessee? You know what?
I was fortunate. I had a good summer going into my junior year. I got invited to, at the time it was the Nike Hoops Jamboree, which is kind of like the tryout to get into the big Nike camp. Some guys were good enough that got invited to the top Nike camp. They've changed names now, but the Nike All-American camp. And I made that cut, so to speak. And so I got invited to the Nike camp, man, and I played well. But you really don't know. And then all of a sudden, the first day that people can start calling or recruiting you, man, just the mailbox was flooded with letters. And it's a pretty cool feeling. And I remember being at my friend's house in Memphis, and I think it was Saturday morning that my dad called. And you're like this. Back then, I think he might have he might have hit me on my beeper.
Yeah. Put an extra code in for you.
So he might have put it on my beeper. That was big time back then. So I was walking around with a little pager and said to call him. And I called, and he was like, and he'd gone through the process. You got to understand how cool it was for my family too, because my dad, man, he worked his butt off trying to get my siblings recruited. Mm-hmm. Like, he was cutting down tapes, and he's going. And this is all with handheld VA, cameras, and trying to edit all that stuff and send it out to D2 schools and all that. And so to actually have people coming to you was a big deal. And so our guy, Coach Chris Ferguson, the assistant coach under Buzz Peterson, his credit, man, he was the first one to call. And he called my dad and said, hey, we'd like to offer a scholarship to your son. And, they hit it off right there. But I didn't grow up being a huge Tennessee fan. I mean, I was neutral. Right. If anything, I was more of a pro sports guy. Right. And I just didn't have that allegiance to any school. And so I hadn't really even been thinking about Tennessee. And so I went through the process. Stanford was up there, Clemson. But loyalty is a big thing for me, man. And so it was Tennessee's to lose from that point on. And so when I went up and got a chance to do the recruiting visit up there. And but you're right. I mean, all jokes aside, you and that team were a big part of it, because even though you guys didn't end up with the team success you wanted under Coach Peterson, at the time, all signs were pointing upward. And you guys were getting pretty close to getting over the hump. And so the energy was there. Right. And watching y'all's games on TV, I mean, before I committed, I was becoming a fan. Right. I was getting the EA Sports video games, when they were still doing that. And I'm playing with you guys. I'm picking Tennessee every time. So just starting to get more and more involved and committed. And I committed early on. And it was, and it's a sales pitch they commonly use, but I was up there after our visit. And I had a lot of friends that had already graduated from high school that were at Tennessee. Right. And so when guys like you and Brandon Crump are hosting me on my visit, and usually I know you're like, man, where are we going to go tonight? I'm like, let me tell you where we're going to go tonight.
You already got it planned out. Like, oh, man, you really got to get up here.
Yeah, so y'all are like, I know at the end of that, y'all are like, man, Coach, his feet are slow. I'm not sure if he can play D or really run the point for us, but we're going to have a good time.
Yeah, you know what the party is.
Anyway, but I learned real quick. I was too slow, and I couldn't party like everybody else could. I said, man, that's got to be special circumstances. I got to be in the weight room and get on my diet. So that was in the future. But anyway, but I remember being in Buzz Peterson's office, and they were recruiting myself and another point guard out of Texas. And they said, look, we've got one scholarship left. It's between you and him. And whoever takes it first is going to get it. But we're asking you, if you want it, come get it. Now, did they probably say the same thing to him?
Right.
Yeah, because he tried to commit about 2 days later.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I took it. I told my parents and talked to Coach Tippett as well. I said, look, I'm ready to do this. I felt the bond with you guys. Mm-hmm. I felt that like the trajectory was going upward at Tennessee. And I saw it, like even though the fans weren't filling the stadium, just like now, I mean, it's one of those, if you build it, they'll come. Like I could see past the half-empty arena. It's like, look, the fan base is there. You just got to get a product out there, and they'll show up.
Exactly. And coming into that, man, I remember like when I first got to University of Tennessee, they had the black curtains up around the concourse and the upper concourse, the upper seating, and I was like, man, this is nothing right here. Like this stuff got to come down. So we got a little excitement going in it, and with the coaching changes, the way the things went, it didn't go as planned. But like you said, the family atmosphere was there. Things were pointed upward. When you got there, you come in with a very good class. You're with Buzz for a second, and then you go to another coach, with Coach Pearl. That first year with Buzz, was it a culture shock, from finding your role on the team, what your impact was going to be? I know coming into it, most definitely going to make an impact. But did you know right away what your impact was going to be, or how did that come along? How was what was that?
Yeah.
Trying to figure out?
There were growing pains for sure. I mean, I was struggling. I remember they would break up the guards and the bigs, and that's how we were doing sprints at the end of practice. And I mean, C.J. Watson, Stanley Asumnu, those better athletes, they were making their time and they were winded. But man, it took everything in my heart to make the time. And I'm sitting there with my head in the trash can at the end. So, I mean, it was, from a conditioning standpoint, and just knowing, because I always tell people, look, through every stage of my career, I felt like I worked as hard as I knew how to work. Mm-hmm. But then you find out, wait, there's another level. Right. Oh, and here's another level of commitment. And, maybe I can watch more film and I can get an edge there. Or here's I can work on my diet. So I enjoyed that process as hard as it was of like, all right, look, I can't have the same body fat type as the Boom Boom Room Ron Slay. I'm out here trying to compete. And you probably won't remember this, but it was my first SEC game. I think it was at home. I know it was at home against Georgia. I'm backup point guard. They had a dude, Rashad Wright, who was a senior. He was good, and he was a pest on the ball. Mm-hmm. I'm bringing the ball up the court, and I could barely get past half court. I think I had 2 or 3 turnovers in like a 3-minute span right before half. Yeah. And you're still in town, so you come in the locker room and you're not ready. You're not quite ready to like hand over that captain role yet, even though your eligibility's gone. You're like, hey, DB, man, you can't be playing with that ball out there, man. This ain't non-conference. This ain't App State no more, man. This big time. You better learn how to handle that ball. And I'm just sitting there like, you're right, man. And you're calling me out, and and so those were some of those times where you start kind of second guessing yourself and you lose confidence. Right. But I think the best thing I had going for me was just going back to everything from my AAU days to junior high to high school. I won, man. I was on winning teams. I knew what winning looked like. And that was some of the struggle for me was my freshman and sophomore year. And I'm not pointing fingers at guys, but it just seemed like, the losing, the more you lose, the easier it gets. Mm-hmm. And so some of these guys had lost enough to where it wasn't getting as harder. And I'm sitting here after you lose a game like, dude, I'm not used to this. But other people are just like, all right, well, where are we going to go tonight?
Exactly.
Like, nah, it doesn't work like that. So you know, that was sort of from a culture standpoint and expectation standpoint, that was tough because and one thing that did change and look, Buzz and those guys, they were searching for answers too. But I think one of the biggest things that hurt us was we just never had that set identity.
Right.
Like one game, it's like, hey, we're going to play fast, and if it works, great. And then the next game, if we lost, here's the new game plan. And so, you know, I think we just really struggled to ever quite have that identity.
I'm gonna tell you what, man. To piggyback off of that, my senior year, I remember being in the SEC tournament, and like you said, like when you lose, it's easy to repeat that, you know, and then go through the process of it. And my senior year, John Higgins became ineligible going to the SEC tournament, so I was kind of left to shoulder the load in a sense. I had CJ with me, Crump with me, but they hadn't been on that stage before. So I remember Scooter McFadden was my guy, love him to death. He was sitting out because he had transferred. We just lost to Auburn against Marquise Daniels and those guys. And man, I'm talking about they were running double team, triple teams. This is whirlwind. So we ended up losing. And mentally, I knew that was going to put us out of the tournament. I think we finished like fourth in the SECs, but Higgins being there, not another senior to lean on, it hurt a little bit. So we go in the locker room, and this speaks to how guys were acting. I go in, and I'm going to say it because I tell them to this day, Crump, Scooter, and somebody else, after Buzz gave this talk, somebody was laughing, and I'm sitting there like, hey, man, this is some BS, you know, and not in them words, but I'm explicit with it. Like, this is BS, man. Y'all sitting here laughing. Scooter, you ain't even playing. Like, and you sitting up here joking around like it's tomorrow. Like, it's over for me. Like, this is it. This ain't the way I want to go out. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, and I remember saying it to this day. I didn't even shower or anything. I grabbed my stuff and left. I was like, dude, when y'all become juniors and seniors, I promise you, I hope you have the same exact feeling that I have right now. You know what I mean? And they was like kind of stunned. Like, I'm like, man, and I don't wish that on all y'all, but y'all too, man, I hope you have this feeling, man, because there's nothing like this when you know what you put into the season, you know what you gave, and then you can sit there and laugh and be like, where we going? Like, dog, that's
I'm with you. And those things make you tougher and better. And I look back on it from a positive, like, I hate that for you because you had to experience that your last year. But same thing, like I remember sophomore year, and we're going into the SEC tournament. We're not having a good year. Buzz is on the hot seat. But we had talent. And it's like, I'm sitting here with a few other guys, not just me, but you had some guys that were like, you know what, this is our last chance. You know, this is when the Cinderella runs happen. If we win the SEC tournament, you know, we could, you know, here we go. But we had guys that had already booked their flights for spring break. They were already talking about where they're going in Panama City. And I'm in the back of the bus like you, like, man, what the F are y'all talking about? Like, we're supposed to be all in on this. And they packed, you know, one set of clothes and all that. And so it hurts. But I'll tell you this, though, the guys that didn't quit on Buzz and that staff, those were the ones that when Bruce Pearl came in were ready for that success. Other guys either got kicked off the team or they had to transfer. They just weren't ready. And so those things come back to bite you. But I remember my senior season on that note, I was the only senior. Major Wingate had gotten kicked off the team. And so Chris Lofton was a junior, Jawan was, and Jordan Howe. So I still had some veterans around here, but, you know, there's nothing like the urgency of a senior. And we had all these freshmen, Duke Cruz, Wayne Chisholm, Josh Tabb, Marcus Johnson, Ramar Smith, some good players, man, but they're young, they're immature, and it's just light years. And I remember speaking to them once, and for any young kids that are listening, like, and you've lived this, and I wasn't playing well myself. But to me, that's when you show signs of leadership is you can't just go out there and lead after you had a good game. You got to be able to stand up in front of the team and say, look, I know I can do better too. But I remember telling them basically like, look, I know you guys feel like you got a long road ahead of you, but when you're a senior, you're going to want those underclassmen to treat it like it's their senior year. I said, so please, I'm just looking at the rest of the schedule. We got 10 games left, and guess what? I'm going to be in Denmark or Holland somewhere in 6 months. So you guys, I need y'all to get with it, man. Treat my year like you would your own senior year. And it was a process, but eventually we did. But I still look back. We lost that year to Ohio State in the Sweet 16, up 17 at half. But I tell you what you talked about, I'm just a believer. Our slogan that year was deserved victory. And Bruce did a great job with that team. But we were young and mature. And when you looked around that locker room, you want to be able to feel sad for every single person in that locker room.
Right.
And I couldn't. And that's a lesson learned to say, hey, man, before you start a season, if this thing ends bad or ends on a sour note, we at least better be able to look at each other in the eye and say, you gave everything you had. You did. And I look back with disappointment there a little bit, just to say, but again, that's part of the maturation process as those guys grew older. Wayne Chisholm, he grew, matured, and by his senior year, led him to an Elite Eight. So that's part of the process. But, it is. It's just about leaving it all on the court, playing every game like your last.
It is, man. That's a true test of character. I remember my sophomore year when we got put out by Charlotte. And then we'll leave these sad times alone. We're going.
Yeah.
I remember we got put out by Charlotte, man, and we were all sitting down in the locker room. They were saying the media getting ready to come in. And we were like, dog, don't let them in right now. We didn't even sit in the locker room. All 12 guys were sitting in the shower, just sitting, fully dressed, just sitting there, man. And everybody was crying. And I was looking around like, damn, Tony Harris, this is his last time.
Yeah.
Isaiah Victor, I was like, this, I'll never, I'm pissed I couldn't do something more.
Yeah.
Because I know what they gave, and I wanted to. I never wanted to have that feeling, and then for it to flip to my senior year and have all the individual accolades and everything, but still not getting to that tournament and be able to make some noise together and leave it in a better shape than when I was leaving out. I mean, when I came in, that's tough, man. But I do think guys like CJ learned, you know what I mean, and
that's what a lot of people have to understand is guys like yourself, though, you did because you allowed guys like C.J. Watson, myself, the Chris Loftons, and all these guys are much better than me. But those guys, committed to Tennessee because of what they felt could happen and they had seen. And so those guys don't come without y'all's presence. So, yeah, man, it's just lesson learned because you want to be able to I tell young kids sometimes, there's a big difference between disappointment and regret. Right. Disappointment's going to happen.
Yeah.
But regret is when you sit there and you're in that shower and you're a senior and you're crying. And it's one thing, it's disappointment when you did everything you could have done.
Right.
It's regret when you realize, man, maybe I should have been more dedicated, more focused, this and that. So it's just a learning experience.
One of the fondest times, man, you guys are on the road at Florida. Dane Bradshaw seals the game. Type me through that. And this goes back to you being a winner and throughout your entire career, just finding a way to win. Like just no matter what it is, whether it's a sprint, whether it's diving up the loose ball, whether it's making a shot, making the right pass, a screen, whatever it is, doing whatever it takes. How gratifying was that to go down to Florida and get that win?
Well, you're kind to say that. I remember once they fellow Vol, Jason Witten, and he stood up in front of his team once. They had, I think they posted on Twitter or something, but and they talked about a big play he had. Maybe it was in an big NFC rivalry game or something. I forget, but he was the one that scored the touchdown, but he broke the play down and said, here's what this guy did. Here's what that guy did. Here's what that – and that's how I feel when people talk about that play. We had just turned the ball over, and it's tie game. And I'm ready. Okay, we're going to go back in the half court, get a stop, force overtime.
Right.
I can't remember if Florida or we called timeout, but either one, timeout, they're taking the ball out on the sideline near our bench in the backcourt. And in the huddle, Bruce goes, all right, guys, we're going to press them right here. We're going to steal this ball. We're not going to overtime. We're scoring right here. And he can say it in a much more convincing fashion than I am, but you believe it because we've done it before. We create steals all game long. Why get on our heels now in the last 15 seconds? So we pressed up there. Major Wingate had great ball pressure on the inbounds passer. Everybody was in full denial. C.J. Watson was covering guys, and and it just became a kind of a loose ball. It was a bad pass. Corey Brewer threw a bounce pass, kind of a lazy pass, and it was either myself or C.J. going to get it. But you know how it is, man. It's a loose ball. I'm not waiting on anybody else. And then I got it and did a spin move, the only move I got in my arsenal, but it worked, and laid it up. But I'll tell you this, even then, though, people forget, that got us up too.
Right.
We still had to get a stop.
Yep.
So we come back and we get a stop, and then you got to sink 2 free throws to make it a 2-possession game, close that thing out. So we get the stop as a team. Chris Lofton, twice in my career have I gotten credit with Florida wins, where Lofton's the guy that seals the deal at the free throw line. He goes down there too. Those things get forgotten about. So, but going back to just kind of how my mind works and how it pays off. And this will be a Boom Boom Room exclusive right here. I've never shared this story.
There we go. That's what it's
for. When you have this winning mindset, like you talk about, you remember the losses a little bit more than you do the wins. That's why we're dwelling on the bad stuff. But here's one thing, and so I don't go back and watch those games or anything, but I have seen where it was played the previous possession when we turned it over before the steal. I'll go back for 1 second, but that was Bruce Pearl's first year. And when he first came in, he started something in the off season and through the regular season called night shooting. So guys could do their practice, and then from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night, managers were going to be in there, and it was an open practice opportunity to just get shots up.
Right.
You could either come or not, and it was up to you, but there was a manager and a ball rack waiting for you. And, man, even though my percentages won't prove it, I was there every night. And my roommate was Andre Patterson, UCLA transfer, old Dre, number 22. He was a great player for us, did a lot of good things. But he was my roommate. I remember going to night shooting, and I said, come on, Dre. So he came with me one time. And it happened to be the same time Bruce Pearl walked to the gym at like 9 o'clock. So he's walking to his car, and he's seeing who's there. So in his mind, it's like, I'm getting credit, Dre's getting credit, the brownie points.
Right.
And so the next night, I'm like, Dre, come on, man, let's get shots up. He's like, no, I'm good. You go ahead. I'm like, all right. And this became the trend. And so I went, and I come back after the night shooting. Dre's on the couch, and he's like, so was Bruce there? I was like, no, he didn't show up. He's like, you idiot. Like, you dummy.
That sounds great, too.
You wouldn't work when coach wasn't looking. Oh, man, you didn't get like – I'm like, Dre, that's fine, man. It's going to come up. It'll come back to repay you. It'll repay me, man. And so Jawan Smith in the Florida game, he drives and does a great little spoon feed right under the basket for Andre. And that's a chance for Andre to catch the ball, go up and dunk and get us the lead and be the hero. That ball bounced right off of Dre's hands into the crowd, turnover. And it set me up for the play that everybody remembers me by. And so I don't say that to give myself credit, but just for everybody out there working when nobody's watching, there's going to be times where guys get credit or make a game-winning shot or whatever it is where you say, man, that guy, he didn't really deserve that. But all you can do is worry about yourself, man. Control what you can control, and good things will happen. So I remember watching a replay of that game or of that segment, and I go, I never even thought about that at the time.
Yeah.
Dre gets to be the hero. But you know what? I love you, Dre, but you didn't deserve it, man.
That's all me. That's all me. And that's another thing, man. I try to relate to kids, man, now to be the guy that's uncool. That's the coolest thing, because you set yourself up for moments like that. And I think that this generation now, not to beat on them or anything, but I think that's what's missing. You're so cool, and it's the cool. I have a lot of guys that work out with me, pro guys, Alex Renfro, Makias Dokes, and we always talk about after the workout. how being cool won't get you paid, but being uncool, have you longevity and sustain a very long career and get paid doing it. You know what I mean? Regardless if it's NBA or whatever. So, man, kids, if you listen, man,
and people are going to respect it. They're going to respect it. And you've had these experiences. I'll share another one of mine to that extent. Ramar Smith had just gotten eligible and was a top recruit. And so this is going into my senior year. This is summer. He comes down, and, you know, Ramar and I couldn't come from two different backgrounds if we tried.
Right.
You know? He grew up in a tough environment. I grew up in a two-parent household. But, you know, we're on the same team now. And we had to run sprints for somebody got in trouble or whatever. And so we're running sprints. And Ramar's a cool cat, you know, and nobody wants to step on his toes. But everybody knows how athletic he is, how fast he is.
Right.
So your boy's not making his times.
Yeah.
And we're having to rerun sprint after sprint. And he's kind of like, you know, man, F this, you know, that, and like, you know, and not really trying as hard as – and everybody's kind of sitting around like, to your point, not they still want to be cool with Ramar. They don't want to, you know, they don't want to get on his bad side. And I'm over here like, man, you know, and some of that's your senior urgency stuff, some leadership. But I was like, hey, man, like a week ago, you were praying that you'd be eligible to come here. And now this is what you do? And like, I'm cussing him out. He's cussing me out. We're getting separated. We get on that line, though, and we have to run that sprint. And guess what? He made his time. And the funniest part of that story is Reverend Mitch, the team chaplain's over there on the side. He's seeing all this go down. But you know what? How I felt good at the end of it? He came to me afterwards. He said, now, granted, a lot of cuss words got thrown out. He said, hey, DB, just wanted you to know. I'm like, man, he's here. I'm about to hear an earful from him.
Yeah.
He goes, I thought you handled that the right way. I go, praise the Lord. I got a pass. But you know what? But to finish my point on it, when it became my senior night, Ramar Smith will tell you to this day, he had tears in his eyes during my senior night.
Right.
Like we got closer. We never became great friends. We didn't hang out too much off the court. But you know what? There was a mutual respect there. And after that little beef, sometimes people think you got to have some big sit-down team meeting.
Right.
And afterwards, like I see him later in the afternoon, and it's just a simple, hey, we good? Yeah, we're straight. And then dap up. Let's go to war. He knew where I was going to draw a line in the sand, and I knew where he was. And so you got to be able to get out of that comfort zone and risk being best friends with everybody. Being a good teammate doesn't mean being a nice teammate by any means.
Exactly. You hit that right on the head. So moving along in it, like we could go on and on about stories through Tennessee. What is your fondest memory when thinking of Tennessee? And then after, while you're telling this, and kind of in the back of your head, think about your Mount Rushmore for Tennessee sports, period. Tennessee, anything involving sports. So to let you think about it for a second, mine is, especially as I get older, the family and the camaraderie of Tennessee Vols, you know what I mean, whether it be Lady Vols, men Vols, whatever it may be. I think the family atmosphere, like us being able to reach back and always pick up the phone and always answer or get back to you, I think that's one of the biggest things. And me being playing all over the world, knowing people from different schools, a lot of people didn't have that. And that was funny to hear from people. I'm like, man, dude, we was at the soccer games, at the volleyball games, and like baseball games. We were everywhere supporting each other. So I think that's one of mine. What's your fondest memory looking back on your time in Tennessee?
Gosh, as much, you know, the competition and making the plays and all that. But I'll say one moment that where just pure joy for us was my junior year, so Bruce's first year, and Selection Sunday comes. And what's cool about Selection Sunday, if you're not on the bubble, is you know you're already going to get some good news for the most part.
Right.
but here we were a year before. We were 14-17. We were picked to finish, I think, last in the SEC. We won the SEC East, and I mean, people didn't like me in Knoxville. Facebook had started to come up. There were Facebook groups called Dane Bradshaw Blows, all that stuff. And so we're on our redemption, man. So it's all coming full circle. I had kids come up to me saying, "Hey, last year my dad said I couldn't get your autograph because you weren't any good, but now I can't." Like that stuff.
Yeah.
And so you get the redemption, but when and granted, I think we got seated too high because we were struggling down the stretch. But when we were sitting there in Selection Sunday, and they announced us as a number 2 seed, and man, it was just an opportunity for everybody to just explode, rejoice, and you had about 24 hours to get that joy out of you and focus on the team. But there's really not that many moments at all during the season where you have an opportunity to reflect. That's usually just strictly postseason. And even then, the postseason typically ends in a loss. So, but that was just kind of like a momentous occasion for us right there.
Okay. Now, give me your Mount Rushmore, and you got an honorable mention also.
Okay.
Mount Rushmore for Tennessee, the University of Tennessee sports, and then I'll tell you mine.
Okay. So I'm going to keep it. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to keep it in my era.
That's fine.
Like when I was at Tennessee.
That is fine.
Because that's been a fun part for me is watching these guys go on and have great success.
Mm-hmm.
But, I was there with Monica Abbott, Candace Parker. So they're going to be on there. You got CeeLo, Chris Lofton. And then I got to think on the football side, who was – I mean, and even if I went past football, Luke Kochaver was – I mean, I didn't even play baseball, but one time he let me sit in there by the plate and just watch a fastball come in. I've never had more respect for the game than seeing that come at me. So I'll have to get back to you on the football side. I mean, Eric Ainge did a heck of a job.
Yes, he did.
At that time. Robert Meacham, Omar Gaither, Kevin Burnett. I'm trying to think, man. There were some stars there, but it was, how it is. And now I'm starting to see, it was fun watching guys go through the pros, and now they're starting to retire. So that's the next step of feeling old. Yeah. But that's kind of my cheat sheet list there.
Okay. Okay. So mine was I had Shamika Holtzclaw. She was on mine. Coach Summit is on mine. I think Chris Lofton. Chris Lofton was on mine. And this was without putting me on because I'm jumping on it. I'm just gonna put
of course.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah.
But the fourth, no, I'm sorry. Chris Lofton was my honorable mention. Then it was Peyton and it was Al Wilson. So I think those four were, man, so influential to Tennessee everything.
Yeah.
Shamika winning, Pat, Coach Summit, rest in peace. Her name says enough.
Yeah.
Wilson, the way he anchored the defense, man, and really made people believe, and the way he played, dog, like that was that all. I wanted to be just like that on the basketball court.
Yeah.
And Peyton, Peyton. What else can you say about Peyton? But
that's right.
Then
man, it's a fun part of being at Tennessee is just kind of and knowing those guys different than what you see just as the lead into the ESPN broadcast. It's like. Like those guys are getting all the hype, and 4 hours ago you were sitting there at the Gibbs cafeteria eating some pregame meal,
That's
with
the
them.
Funny part of it. Exactly.
It's a cool experience.
Exactly. So I also had CeeLo and Chad Newman. They walk hand in hand in my honorable mention.
Oh yeah.
We don't make it without Chad. I know it. I know we don't.
That's the truth, man. Chad Newman, he's the greatest ever,
without a doubt. So. Transitioning, basketball career is done at University of Tennessee. You get ready to go overseas. Tell me what happened.
So after the greatest NBA draft snub of all time, the the Holland Seals came calling, man. So I joke when I'm talking at basketball camps or whatever. I'm like, man, I grew up dreaming to play for the Chicago Bulls, man. I grew up I loved watching the Jordan series on ESPN. But I grew up loving Scottie Pippen and all that. I would get inside my garage and I have the door shut. The basketball goals outside. I'd have the door shut and I'd pretend like I was the Bulls announcer. I'd say, starting for your Chicago Bulls, Dane Bradshaw. I'd hit the garage door open. I'd come up, it's lifting up. And I'm high-fiving guys, imaginary players, all that. And then you fast forward, 16 years later, and it's starting for your Holland Seals, Dane Bradshaw, and the crowd's going, arr, 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 doing Seals barks, man. So you win some, you lose some, but you gotta set high goals. And it was, Holland itself was great, very American friendly. But our team was almost as bad as the mascot. We were getting whooped, and but it's like anything. You get in there, if you play well, you can go kind of a new city, new environment. But I do think that's the first time that you really, and you've experienced this overseas. Like it's the first time that it's really a business,
right?
And like, even though we're a low paid team, but if I'm kind of the higher paid American that's supposed to be over there, you feel a little more guilt when you have a bad game and you're walking past the team owner, and it's different when there's that involved, as opposed to in college it's like I'm on scholarship just like you, but
exactly.
like, you kind of feel like you didn't do your job, like from a monetary standpoint. So it was interesting, but it also makes you appreciate just how much like college really is the last time to like have that close-knit group, because after that, guys got families, they've got kids, they're one and done from a team to team standpoint, getting traded. But I intended to play for a few more years after that, just kind of get it out of my system. But there's never going to be a right time to call it quits. You're going to be reliving games the rest of your life and wanting to lace them up. But I got recruited to work for my boss, John Thornton, big Tennessee supporter, and I've been working for him since 2008, and it's been an awesome experience and so many things from basketball that I'd take up another hour of your time if I talked about everything that's translated to work and family life that basketball planted the seeds for.
Well, before we wrap up, man, tell me one last thing. How did the vertical leap come about?
Oh man, so
because it's a fine line you got to walk when writing a book about experiences.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I did. The tell-all will come out later. So after my junior year, during my junior year, I hurt my wrist and I needed to have surgery. And I was playing through it, and then I had surgery. But I'm like, really, the off season is the first time you're really going out in Knoxville, because during the season it's just game to game, practice, study hall, all that stuff. But man, and so when you got your Tennessee sweats on and a big old cast on your hand, you're even more noticeable. And so I just remember going around and it felt like a celebrity experience. I didn't realize how many people really followed it. I mean, that sounds silly to say, but just like everywhere you went, it was like, how's the wrist? What's it like playing for Bruce Pearl? And because everybody wanted to know more about Bruce and more about how this got turned around, this and that. And I remember my mother-in-law now, she and my wife, they got me a digital camera for my birthday. Yeah. And they were like, you can take pictures next year when you're on the road. And then we started talking. It was like, write a diary. And somebody said like a book. And we just started talking. It was like, it could sell. And I called Craig Pinkerton, who was our SID at the time, who's now over at the SEC office. Right. And I called him with the idea because we had some great stories and things like that. And before I could finish it, he said, man, do it. Yeah. He goes, when I was at Kansas, a guy named Jared Haas, who's now coaching in the collegiate ranks, he did the same thing with a book called Floor Burns or something. I think it was Floor Burns. And he said, man, it was a great experience for him. So I just kept a diary throughout it all. And at the time I was getting my master's in sport management. Mm-hmm. And so it counted as a senior project. So I'm killing two birds with one stone. And and was just keeping the book up to date with funny stories. And I remember, and Bruce knew what I was doing throughout the season. And when we made it to the Sweet 16, we're walking off the court, and I was joking. I was like, "Man, Coach, I'm gonna sell a hell of a lot of books off that one." He goes, "And I just got a big raise too." So we're walking off, grinning like that. And so it was great, man. I would, even if players out there, if you don't take it to a book publishing standpoint, I would encourage you to just keep that diary, jot notes down, man, because the things that you would not have been able to remember or recall otherwise are endless. So it's a lot of fun to look back on.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you inspire me, man. So the sleigh ride will be out soon.
That's right. Yeah. I was going to ask you, with the NBA going on with the bubble, they've got the hotline for people not following the rules.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, I meant to tweet at you earlier. I was like, man, and the statute of limitation has to apply. So, but I'll be a snitch. But I was like, man, if I had to name 3 teammates who I know would not last in the NBA bubble, they are X, Y, Z. And I thought I'm going to let you start the snitch line on Twitter. Because I'm telling you right now, I'm snitching on Jawan, Josh Tabb,
guaranteed,
and Jameer Hendricks. I love you guys, but you aren't ready for the bubble, man, or the bubble's not ready for you.
Yeah, it ain't a doubt in my mind. CJ texted me and said the same thing, man. Like, dude, how much would you be paying security to sneak out the back door? I was like, hey, at least get $1,500 out of me. Without question. So, hey, man, I appreciate it, Dane, man. Much love, dog. Coming through and showing some love in the Boom Boom Room, and we give you a shirt. So,
this was fun, man. You're still one of my idols, so appreciate all you've done to pave the way, and thanks for letting me go down memory lane. So, anytime.
My guy, I appreciate it, man.